Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for coming back to our LinkedIn Live, all about unfiltered conversations around SEO and GEO. And I'm so excited to have Tom Johnson with me for this LinkedIn Live. Love to start off with introductions and then you'll hear all about him. So, Tom Johnson is the founder of Heroic Digital, a UK-based SEO consultancy, and has spent the past 9 years working exclusively in search. His career has taken him from agency side SEO to in house leadership roles at major brands, including We Buy Any Car, the UK's largest car buying company. Tom first encountered generative AI when GPT-2 was released, and that's a few years ago, and had a front row seat to the transformation of search ever since. Today, he helps clients navigate a rapidly changing landscape where rankings no longer guarantee clicks, which is something that we're all grappling with. AI overviews are reshaping user behavior, and marketers are debating whether GEO is truly different from SEO. Known for his practical test and learn approach, Tom advocates for what he calls search everywhere optimization, a strategy that looks beyond Google to the growing ecosystem of AI search engines, social platforms, video, and other discovery channels. So, hi, Tom.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Enrico. Thanks for the
Uh,
intro.
yeah, glad to see you. And there's so many things we can unpack, but let us go back to that Brighton SEO conference when you first saw GPT-2. What did you think was about to happen and what actually happened in terms of search?
So, yeah, cast my mind back to, I think it was around October 2022. I was attending Brighton SEO. There was a plethora of sessions you could attend, technical SEO and all that, but there was one in particular that I wanted to go to. It was a AI search session. And the people in the room at that time were very interested in AI search from a productivity point of view and for content creation. I think a lot of marketers were skeptical of using AI content. And, a lot of people were using tools like Surfer and things like this and were pretty concerned about using AI at scale for their clients, but wanted to test. And that was probably how most people were, you know, considering AI at the time. So yeah, we were, that's what I was there to learn about. I was super keen about the content writing aspect of AI and everything else and all these tools we could use. And came out of that particular session, being like, whoa, this is totally different to what I imagined. There was GPT-2 and GPT-3 on show, and at the time, it was used as a API mostly. It's not how you see it now as a search platform on ChatGPT or Perplexity, and even Gemini. It was a sort of sandbox that you would test at different workflows and everything else, plug into Google Sheets, plug into pretty much anything you want as an API, and people do that a lot now, but that's all it was used for. And yeah, it was just like everyone in the room was like, "Whoa, this is going to transform." But you know, literally 1 month later, I think it was in November, OpenAI announced ChatGPT, and then ever since, so just under 4 years later, it's just progressed and progressed to the point that it is now on a major marketing channel.
What was it before and what is it now in terms of AI search? Like, was it a productivity play before, and is it something else? How do you sort of explain it?
Conversational,
Conversational? Okay. Okay.
yeah,
Hmm.
I'd say so because you know, we had productivity and was still a big thing back then. People wanted shortcuts to something that takes a lot of time and a lot of resource to, you know, content writing to actually do. Um, and then now it's different. Now it's conversational. People do that want to have the conversation with AI search to find, you know, information about particular topics and areas and make decisions, buying decisions, but also they want to know how to code and all these other things too. So there's a lot, but there's AI use cases for everything. But I guess search is what we want to talk about probably a little bit more.
You spent like a decade in SEO. What's the single biggest assumption you had about search that AI has completely broken, or what's changed in your life?
Yeah, you know what? I don't think I've ever had a real assumption about AI search. I think that it's constantly being changing, and I think I can only speak for myself, but a lot of people in the industry have had to be reactive to this. And a lot of people in SEO, we new technologies come around, but we only really start focusing on it as marketers when the user behavior shifts and people start actually adopting these technologies, or else why would we spend time on it? So we had voice search and people were talking about it, but never really materialized as something we had to focus on. And AI search could have been that, and it hasn't been in the end. But yeah, we had to be reactive as ChatGPT came out, and we still we were testing it. It was kind of a cool thing, but then eventually we realized that that's something we need to optimize for. So yeah, I've just a lot of people are being reactive, and that's just because our nature as marketers is probably that we need to see how users behave first.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. So, when you think about your client base, are you doing more SEO services or are you doing more GEO services? I know that you just said, as marketers, we become very reactive. Where are you in the spectrum of SEO, GEO?
Yeah, great question. So how I frame my services and how I sell, SEO as it's called, I guess now. Maybe I don't know, everyone's calling it something different, but I frame it as you have a website, it is an asset, and if you invest in that website, you improve the content, you speak to your audience, your target ICP, and you have the right landing pages, the right service pages that across not just Google, but other search engines and now AI search, that website is an asset will compound and you'll get a return on investment for the efforts that you put in. And that's to me is what SEO is. It's search everywhere optimization, a bit of a call to the, what you said in the introduction there. But that's how I would sell it. And specifically in terms of a framework, there's a lot of foundational work you do that works for all platforms and all search engines. Good content, like I say, and positioning and internal linking and just good technical SEO. But there is definitely scope for the right clients to have AI search sprints, is what I would call them, where maybe you look at the gaps, and this is something I actively do, and it's very practical. Is go, okay, you have a prompt or a keyword, that are very similar in the same topic. You look at that, how that keyword is performing organically, if it's strong and great, and then you look at how that's doing on an AI search platform like ChatGPT or Gemini, and see if there's any gaps. And then you can quite clearly see in the gaps, okay, well, maybe YouTube is servicing more on Gemini because that's quite common, or ChatGPT is favoring, it's pulling from certain listicles or certain sources. So we need to factor that into our organic strategy and maybe try and get links or placements on those particular pages. So that's when you can start getting practical about it with AI search. But I feel like that for me comes a little bit later down the line.
So you said you call yourself SEO consultant, but when you sort of expanded that acronym, you didn't say search engine optimization. Yes, it's exactly what I said, which is search everywhere optimization. So tell me, what is the difference between search engine optimization and search everywhere optimization?
Yeah, so it's become pretty clear that search at a transactional level, once people are looking to buy products and services, has become even more fragmented than it ever was. I'm not having that any, search has ever been simple. People don't just type a keyword and convert. It's never been like that. Even 10 years ago, people would go on YouTube or they would read, Reddit threads even back then to understand how they want to move forward with that purchase decision. However, it is even more messy now than ever. I think people will use TikTok, people will use Pinterest, they'll use now AI search, maybe top of the funnel, mid funnel, and you have to understand that when you're looking to build an organic strategy. Some of that is going to be influenced by what you change on the website, but some of it isn't, and you're going to have to look at other platforms that you don't necessarily own. So it's looking at that and looking at your industry. And I'll give an example, like hospitality. A lot of people who are making decisions on where to eat before they even land on your website, they're going to probably go on social media and search, probably TikTok. I know my girlfriend, for example, whenever we go anywhere on holiday, she's like, right, TikTok straight away, and she'll look there, and then maybe she'll do a Google search and do a booking. So that's hospitality, but that doesn't apply to doesn't necessarily apply to e-commerce, where someone might go on Pinterest initially, and they may decide to get inspiration. Once they've gotten that inspiration, then that forms their keyword, and then then you need to rank for that keyword. So yeah, it's understanding your industry specifically, who you're working with, really digging into the persona of that, that person you're targeting, and then going, right, where do they go? And then where are they going organically? Well, from an SEO's perspective, that's where it is, because we don't do paid work. But yeah, where can we focus on organically? So there's loads. I could go on all day about industry specific examples, but it's search everywhere. It's search wherever your customers are.
Keywords versus prompts. Okay, yeah. Do you define them differently, or do you see them, how do you define them? Because when I think of keywords, you had keywords and long tail keywords, and then now prompts are real questions. So when you're talking to clients, what are you saying, from an organic perspective? Are you trying to reach for keywords, or are you trying to look for prompts?
Yeah, I mean, look, prompts is the biggest question mark in the whole of the geo space right now. We have some attribution through GA4 at the bottom, like the bottom of that funnel, but we don't really necessarily know how people are prompting right now. There was ChatGPT leaks a few years ago, which give us an idea of like average prompt length and things like that. I can't exactly remember the number off the top of my head, but it's a lot more than what an average keyword length would be. So we know that, and just from intuition, we know that people and our own experience, prompt a lot more complex and long tail. But I actually felt like search was moving in that direction anyway. People are trying to cram as much detail into a keyword and get results, the exact result that they want. As personalized as possible too. So, prompts. There's no prompt data. ChatGPT don't give us that data, and I hope that they will eventually. The closest thing we have is Bing on Webmasters. They give us grounding query data, which is like, no, I'll go on too technical. It's like the search that AI makes to get the information. So it's the next thing, the closest thing to a prompt. But yeah, just a more conversational way of asking, of getting information. And I think one thing people don't talk about is, we have a lot of businesses have customer service data too. And I feel like the closest thing we have in real data to a prompt is how people speak on the phone and make buying decisions. I think that's really important data too. But prompts is such a mystery, and it's probably the reason I have the most reluctance to throw my going head first into geo is the fact we don't have that data. That's your starting point. So it's it's tricky.
I'm just asking for your opinion. So I've heard SEO practitioners, whether they're search engine optimization practitioners or search everywhere optimization practitioners, say they're excited about AI search. Behind closed doors, what are they actually worried about? What are they saying?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of skepticism. I think there's some people who are trying to position themselves as thought leaders in that space and then almost disregarding SEO, which is fine. We're all marketers. It's a brand.
Mm,
Personal branding's big, and being the first in an industry that's emerging is important. In terms of concerns, like everyone has different opinions. I don't think anyone who's serious about SEO thinks that it's going anywhere. I think it's the barrier to entry now is massively increased, which I think is good. You know, there's a lot of there's a lot of grifters in our industry that are trying to bamboozle people, and I think having it being a more serious marketing channel is great because I think there's more dependence on brands and everything else. Basically, SEO is harder, and I think that scares a lot of people. Um, yeah, so that's where I'm at. I think I can only speak about my concerns. I think too in detail, but I the way things are moving, I feel like that my concern would be that users decide that they do not need to go on websites anymore. Now that would concern me a lot because I feel like in an agentic world, you know, if users are comfortable converting in a chatbot on AI search in a search engine, then that completely breaks a lot of the work we do. And that, you know, how I've just described SEO as website as an asset, that it breaks that completely, and it transforms SEO into what I would probably describe as like brand optimization. And having spoke to a lot of people in the digital PR space, that is a nightmare for attribution. How do you prove that, you know, that you changing the sentiment of a brand or you getting, you know, a media publication placement is going to have a commercial impact and, influence in ChatGPT, how that affects things when you're not getting the click on site. That scares me a lot because then we become technical digital PR people, not necessarily SEOs. Um, but that's down to the users. That's I am very skeptical. I think people are very, they like to feel the brand that they're going to buy from, and I think that it should be right that the last click, the last conversion is most likely on the website,
mm.
for the majority of users. But if that changes, that would seriously concern me.
Well, first of all, your stance in the conversation that we had prior to today and your stance today is that SEO isn't dead, which is great. I think it's a very healthy thing to say. But it's also about your role as a marketer, right? Versus PR. I think that's what you're saying. And people just came back from Cannes Lions, which is about creativity. And my understanding is that there was a lot of conversation about this. So what is the role of the brand and how do we make a mark and how do we measure impact, right? I think that's what you're trying to get to.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, if we're not getting the click on site, if the journey is not as we know it, then then you're looking at how you can get your brand featured in the right context. And if people are, imagine this, you're going to have a conversation with ChatGPT. Is this brand good? Send me some brand reviews. You're trying to influence that for then people to make a decision. So that's going to be very difficult to track, and that's going to be insanely difficult. And you haven't factored in the personalization at the user's level. So there's going to be a lot of that going on, and we can influence that absolutely. But if people aren't going onto the website, then it's just like it's going to be very difficult to track.
But have your clients' expectations changed, let's say, in the last 6 months or so, or year? If so, in what way?
Yeah. So we've kind of gone through the whole, I guess, the 4 or 5 years of AI in marketing, really. So we've seen turning from productivity tool to a legitimate search platform. And I think what we've seen over the past 12 months to 6 months, which I've noticed personally, is the impact it has on business and marketing spend. So yeah, now we have clients demanding AI search as a service, and then on the other end you have people that are aggressively selling it. I think, but to answer your question is around the clients and their demands. Um, yeah, the clients all want it, and the main motive for wanting that is to be ahead. You know, they want to be the first. They see it as an emerging channel, but clients don't necessarily look at the landscape right now. You know, it's being disproportionately focused on, I feel. Because if you look at the actual numbers, I don't see any more than 1 to 2% of revenue compared to traditional search. So, you know, you'll see people spending twice as much, 3 times as much on AI search than they are SEO, and I think that's unbalanced in this current state of search. So that's what's changed. A lot of people demanding it. Say the main motive for that is to get ahead, and doesn't always necessarily make commercial sense to focus on it as much as they've had, especially if it's at the expense of good SEO work that could be moving the needle right now.
Are you able to provide good results for your clients? Are they still getting consistent leads like they used to?
Yes. So for me, the click as a metric is not something we should be reporting on anymore. I think a lot of people are clear on that anyway. You know, year on year, most people's clicks are down, and mainly just because of decay with you know, blogs, and then obviously click-through rate impact. But a lot of people are still using traditional search, sorry, to compare to the bottom of the funnel, you know, mid to the bottom of the funnel. So it is still a very good channel, and it is something that you can get great results on. I think where the issues come is that you can rank position one for all your target keywords transactional, and for some businesses there's not as many as you'd think. You know, if you're a local barber's, you know, your transactional keywords are going to be barber in you know, this area to New York, barbers in New York, get haircut in New York, you know, different haircut styles in New York, whatever. But then once you rank position one for all them, you just go, okay, right, well, in the past you go, right, okay, we're going to scale up the funnel, the consideration terms, you know, where's the best place, and etc., etc. And now that's when the strategy doesn't work for traditional search, because well, at least from a clicks and return on investment point of view, because that you're not getting that traffic anymore that you used to get mid to top funnel. And that's, you know, that's why affiliate businesses don't really exist anymore too, because there's a lot of people that made money from the top of the funnel that no longer do that, and that's evidential. Yeah.
So we may be stepping into this landmine here, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, okay? So, you know, Google has said that, you know, SEO is enough, that if you do good SEO, you know, that is equivalent to GEO. And, you know, Google had their I/O summit in mid-May, and at that point, you know, traditional search on the Google homepage shifted down with clicks and blue links and all of that shifted down, and suddenly when you open up Chrome, you know, everything is AI overviews. And I see that you know, there's a lot of conversation around Google and its unwritten contract with publishers and content creators. Like, what are your thoughts on this, like this whole thing? Like, how do you unpack it?
Yeah, I mean, what Google say and what Google want are two different things, and what they, you know, they'll put out a message, and it's hard to tell whether that's for the greater good of the, you know, the internet, or whether that's for their own interests. But often it's for the latter. And yeah, we've seen around 2024 is when I really thought, okay, this unwritten contract has broken down that you're talking about. You know, Google, you know, this contract, for anyone watching, is, you know, Google need people to create fresh content with new insights and first party information, because that feeds the system and that helps them, you know, build their sort of knowledge base, and continue to grow. You know, when you look at AI, you know, AI search and AI, you know, LLMs and everything else, that's really, really important. So in order for people to be encouraged to do that, you know, they need to have some sort of reward, and that'd be clicks and revenue and conversions, and that's just not happening anymore. But 2024, Google introduced the helpful content update, which decimated a lot of small to medium businesses. And so it was so bad that they invited them out to the headquarters to sort of hash it out. And yeah, it was really really bad. And Google put out them with this helpful content update. They put out this messaging like you were saying there you go around like create good content, do this, create helpful content, everything will be fine. And these businesses did exactly that. And instead of being rewarded for that, they got totally smashed. And some of these businesses were totally dependent on Google search for their main source of revenue. And that just says, that says to me that you shouldn't always just trust what they say. And yeah, Google will always have their best interests at heart. So you do have to test things yourself. I think that's my takeaway is that you have to test things yourself, and you can take what Google say on board. And I think there is a lot of truth in what they say. And I think from a technical SEO perspective, everything they say is pretty spot on. But when you get into content and links, you really do have to test yourself.
We only have a few more minutes left. What I do want to do is to celebrate the fact that you became a consultant. You call yourself a freelancer. I see yourself as starting your own business, and I think you celebrated your 1 year anniversary. Yes.
Yeah, a few weeks ago. Yeah.
Yay! Well done.
Thank you.
And I suppose my question to you is, if you were starting your agency from scratch today, knowing everything you know about AI search and all of the fragmentation of media, social media, everything, would what sort of an agency would you build? Would you build something completely different? For somebody who's thinking of starting out, what would you say?
Yeah, I think you have to account for the fact that search isn't just Google. I think you can't build a whole brand around what is traditional SEO right now. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah, I'm going to be relaunching my brand anyway, so it should be a pretty visual answer to your question. Hopefully, in a few weeks, you'll be able to see how that looks. But yeah, for me, it's search everywhere. Look at where, and we've talked about this throughout this, past 30 minutes, but just search is everywhere. So make sure that you build a business around that. And clicks are going to be hard to come by. So yeah, don't sell just SEO. Don't just sell organic search and search engines. Sell your services like think about like an advisor to a website. A website is an asset. You have financial advisors for your cash, your liquid cash. Well, you're an advisor for this website, which should make money. So position your agency like that, and everything should probably be fine. Yeah, and maybe don't put SEO in your limited company name. Maybe. Yeah.
Okay, you heard it straight from Tom. Okay, thanks so much, Tom. And for those of you who'd love to get in touch with Tom, do you want to give your URL or your email address here?
Yeah, so I think probably email or LinkedIn is great to get directly in touch with me. Right
Okay.
now, the website's going through a complete redesign, so there's just a
Mm,
holding page.
yeah.
You can reach me at tom@heroic-digital.com. And yeah, we can chat on there. Even if you just want to have a conversation, feel free to email me.